Welcome to Strength in the Numbers. My name is Andrew Codd, accountant, author, and commercial finance entrepreneur, and it's my job each week to bring you leaders in finance and business and deconstruct with them their real stories, insights, and hard-won lessons into practical advice on the key strengths and qualities you need to remain relevant in accounting and finance today, as well as the steps you can begin to take to elevate the impact you make to have a fun, successful, and rewarding career in accounting and finance. Now let's go over to the show. Hi everyone, and I'm really excited to bring you today's guest, Johannes Vogel from Germany. There he's Director of Finance Strategy and Digital CFO Services at BearingPoint, and a lot of his job is really helping companies move through the digital finance agenda, helping them develop finance strategies and solutions for the digital CFO office. And Johannes has more than 20 years experience in industry and consulting, and based on that he shares us a number of key points in this episode. First off, he gives an excellent summary of the four key digital technologies that are likely the biggest disruptors to accounting and finance over the next few years. Also some practical steps we can begin to take to start adding more value from investments in digital technologies and how we can go about maybe getting those investments in partnership with the business. And he also lists off a number of areas around what we should be expecting from our CFOs to be considering when it comes to having a digital finance strategy. Look, there's a load of value in this week's episode. You can find the detailed show notes, links to resources and more at sitnshow.com/podcast/034. So check it out. And without further ado, over to Johannes and the show. So Johannes, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Glad to be here.
And Johannes, look, we've spoken previously, but some of our audience would like to get to know more about your story. So how did you get into your current role within accounting and finance?
Well, I work as a management consultant right now with BearingPoint, but I really got into the consulting work because I love projects. In my previous role with Turner Broadcasting, I was doing all kinds of different finance functions, accounting manager, etc. But what I really liked most is projects. We had a number of projects, and that's when I landed a job with consulting because one of my ex-colleagues got me into that, and I started working for a consulting firm. Back then it was KPMG in 1998. So it was really the diversity of project work that got me excited for working in consulting, and that's why I'm still in consulting.
That's some tenure, and you must have seen some really interesting things during that time. So are there any particular moments that stand out for you, Johannes?
Well, maybe looking back, as I said, I'm a German citizen, but after school in Germany, I had the chance to get a scholarship with an American university in Georgia. And I was planning on spending 1 year at the university doing some studies and gaining some experience. Well, it turned out that I stayed for a total of 9 years. And so, this was unplanned, but I met someone in the United States, and I got married. And so having having the cultural experience really was an outstanding event in my life, and it still helps me today to work with international clients, to speak the language, to understand the culture and how business is done in Anglo-American cultures. So that was really one key moment in my professional career.
Yeah, I think this global international dimension, being able to understand cultures and translate what we do around the numbers into a way that they understand, I think that's something that I don't believe we tend to cover off in our college studies or business school accounting studies or anything like that. We're probably too focused on the numbers. So that's some great advice that you and others have been sharing, Johannes. So really appreciate you doing that.
To add a comment to that, I think professionally in Germany, when we hire people in consulting, we are placing a premium on also international experience. And in my view, The people that come in from university, they have had a number of different internships abroad or semesters abroad. So I do see a pickup in international exposure earlier than maybe way back when I went to school. So I think that's a very positive trend, and I would reinforce or recommend to any one of your listeners to, if they are still in the process of formation and study, to get some international exposure.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation, Johannes. Like I've got a big smile on my face here thinking about when I was sort of leaving college and starting my career. Working international never really crossed my mind. It was always UK and Ireland, but I have to say some of the most rewarding experiences have come from working with colleagues internationally, leading global teams, and it really adds extra strings to our bow. And that's encouraging when I look at the latest numbers from our podcast. We've only been going a few months, but people have been listening to us in over 100 countries. It's just fantastic to see people taking. Yeah, no, it's just fantastic to see people are taking the globalization of our profession and how important it is to get these diversity of perspectives out there. So that's been really pleasing, and I'm glad people are grasping that. And anyone who isn't, we need to figure out ways of how we can go about, or how they can go about doing that. So, Johannes, I really appreciate those insights. And I suppose in terms of what's happening in and around your work at the moment, what's exciting you most?
Well, that's a good question. Like I said, I work in management consulting, BearingPoint, and I'm in an area called finance and regulatory. So we're helping basically the CFO team to work on projects, to do improvements, to be better set up for the future. And what I really find exciting, accounting, finance, controlling in the past has had sort of a nimbus or an atmosphere of being conservative, being very accurate, being numbers driven, and being precise about having the right financial statements, etc. What I see now over the last, I would say, 1.5 to 2 years in Germany is a strong increase in the almost what I would call a paradigm shift, in that the CFO teams are starting to become more experimental with new technologies. And I'm sure we'll get into that, more technologies like predictive analytics, using big data tools, using artificial intelligence to automate some transactional processes, using artificial intelligence to create chatbots, etc. They're becoming much more experimental to see what value could they derive from these, I call them digital tools, digital technologies, to make the value of their work, the output of their work for the business better and more valuable, so to speak. So the very conservative atmosphere in those finance teams is gradually breaking up. They're still very professional and they need to get their numbers right, but they're also starting to experiment with little projects like looking at predictive analytics tools for cash flow improvement, for having better cash flow predictions, etc. So this mindset change is really I think good, and it will strengthen the finance function overall. I had a conversation with a CFO of a major German automotive player who's also heading up a big finance transformation project globally, and he also reflected this within this finance transformation program. They have started to create little teams to try out new technologies, and they have really gotten into a mode where they also accept some failures. Not all projects will be successful, and so this tolerance of having some mistakes, having some project failures is starting to sink in. Just like I think with most digital technologies, you need to try things out to see if it brings value to your company. And this is the mindset that I'm starting to sense much more now at least in German finance teams.
Well, like that's very. I'm trying to just get my head around this. So in the same sentence, you talk about finance still needing to be conservative, but some are actually being experimental, some accepting some forms of failure. Like that, they're completely different ends of the spectrum. That's a complete, like a mind shift, a mindset 180. I think the Americans would call it. So like how are finance teams practically dealing like with this, like the automotive company you mentioned? So how are they getting their heads around this?
Well, I think it's in that case, what this gentleman told me, it's a cultural thing. It is something that the CEO and the top management team of that group has really started to push over the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years. That there is a big chance in digital for all kinds of aspects for the company in having a better customer experience and having a better product development for cars, etc. And so with this cultural change that has been really led by the top management. Also, you could see it in terms of 2 or 3 years back, they would go around with suit and tie. Today they run around with with polo shirts
Oh my
and
goodness.
maybe a sports coat, but not any. You don't see any more ties, and you see a lot of sneakers in top management, etc. So I think this cultural change, if it is driven by top management and if it's supported by top management, it will trickle down also into the finance teams. And they're really just also from a pragmatic point of view see the chance that we can try out things on a smaller scale. If it fails, it's not going to be a big financial impact. It's like in the startup scene where you say fail fast or move forward. So I think it's more and more this startup mindset that is coming down also into the finance function.
Like for our listeners, if they were to go away, maybe try and do undertake a couple of steps or actions to maybe move towards a more digital finance scenario, be a bit more experimental, accept some smaller failures. What things could they start immediately doing?
Well, I think what you could start immediately is, for instance, we're now at the end of the budget season, but you can contemplate if you're doing new budgets for the following business year, in what areas do we want to create more value with a business. So you can start getting, from the finance point of view, getting more into a dialogue with the business representatives, getting more into a business partner role. Have the discussion, where do you need more insights, more business analysis that we can support from a finance point of view, and then start first projects where you say we need maybe getting a data scientist on board into the team. We need to identify new sources of data from operational systems, from external, to create new insights, and try to really push strongly ways in which finance can create additional insights with existing or with new data that is a value to the business.
I love the way you immediately went straight to the business and working through perhaps maybe some commercial rationale for why we should be looking to invest, because I just thinking about finance. I mean, there's been an expression, I think, where like the shoemaker's son, and what's meant by that is that, the shoemaker's great at mending shoes for everyone else, but when it comes to his own son's shoes or own kids' shoes, doesn't necessarily do such a good job at sending his kids out to their schools with the best shoes on, or making sure they're looking very well. And I that's one area I'm very critical of finance. On one hand is that we tend not to invest very much in ourselves and our own transformations, but we're very good at supporting the business and helping them achieve their aims and putting together numbers to drive projects that will help them. So
I guess that's the destiny of being an overhead function. And I mean, I would agree with you that the investments into finance, being an overhead function, have always been very cautious. And there's a constant pressure on finance teams, and we're seeing that in survey year after year that cost pressure on the finance function is still one of the top concerns of CFOs. At the same time, while I'm talking about creating value for the business being for me, the prime purpose of finance, where they really can add and create value. I would agree with you that a lot of finance teams and a lot of companies may still need to do some homework and maybe repair their own shoes, like you said. Stay with your shoemaker analogy. I mean, that is obviously another thing. I mean, you have to assess how are my processes, are my accounting and controlling processes, are they lean, or is there still some waste in there? So there are still, I mean, for everybody, of course, a good way to look at, can we improve our what I call finance excellence, so being good at what we do, getting the processes right, having systems standardized, etc. This is a task that I think every finance team should look at, and I know a lot of customers that are quite good at every 2 or 3 years looking at their processes again and trying to continuously improve the processes in an incremental way.
See, this is the interesting thing for me. I think the advice you're giving is very practical, Johannes, because we don't have to wait for finance leaders, managers, or CFOs to take the lead on doing that homework. I mean, it's always the best case to go away and figure out, well, let's say our business partners want to grow their turnover. To do that, they're going to need particular levels of insights. We in the finance team could probably provide those if we were able to automate or standardize a few things. That's going to take some investment, but the upshot is some potential return or likely return on the growing revenues for our business partners in on the front lines. So how about we put together a business case, finance benefits, gets the necessary transformation funds or the sign off to go transform, and that trickles upwards as opposed to downwards, and then also the business benefits as well in real commercial terms. And then it's one of those win-win, and hopefully the customer's winning because they're getting better service, product, or whatever is on the table to grow the revenues. So I'm thinking that's definitely something we can do to trickle up or go bottom up. But I suppose from the top down, from the CFO perspective, I know you wrote a terrific article on how do CFOs start to define the new sort of finance strategy, this digital finance. So what sort of things should we be expecting our CFOs to be doing, Johannes?
Yeah, well, I think that's a good question. In the times that we live in, you have so many shifts in terms of business models. We get more and more. I read an article about the biggest platform businesses like Apple, like Alphabet, like Facebook, like Alibaba. The European platform-based businesses are quite small in terms of market cap compared to the American and Asian players. But you also have other shifts in terms of demographics with the generation Y and Z coming in. So I think with these changes in the business context, both from an HR talent point of view, but also from a competitive point of view, from a which business models do we need to support point of view, the CFOs are finding themselves really in a position where they start thinking about, how will my finance team need to look like in 3 to 5 years? How will the finance function look in 2020?
Yeah.
And how are we set up today? And once you get into those thoughts, then I think you're very close to starting to think about finance strategy in terms of, where do we stand today? What are the requirements that we have from the business? What are the requirements we're facing as a company from our overall company strategy, from our competitive situation? Are we being attacked by smaller startups that are more agile and faster in getting a product or a customer service out to the customers? And what can we do from the finance team to start addressing that? So we've had in BearingPoint over the last, I would say, 1.5 to 2 years, a very strong increase in the interest of finance teams wanting to look at their finance, call it finance strategy, call it finance roadmap. How do they get from where they are today to a function that is better set up to address the challenges of today and tomorrow. And then you come into all these topics that we already talked about, doing the basics right, getting the homework in terms of being process oriented, not working in departmental silos, looking at the end customer of each process, looking at your system landscape. If you're a bigger group that has had a lot of M&A activities, you will most likely have some heterogeneous system landscape. So looking at that, are there ways to use also cloud for ERP? We're starting, SAP is obviously quite strong in Germany, and they're pushing very strongly also for a cloud-based S4HANA implementations where you have more the standardization thought and low total cost of ownership by having an SAS software as a service product. We're starting to feel the first inroads also of Finance Force, which is basically the sales force as a cloud service for finance. I think they're even stronger in the UK already. So all these things are bringing CFOs to start thinking about, are we set up in the right way, and what do we need to do, which projects, which initiatives do we need to start to be better prepared for tomorrow?
I'm trying to think. There's a lot there that's going on in terms of the digital disruptors. Individually speaking, is there any one technology more so than another that has the most disruption potential from a digital finance perspective on traditional finance? Is there any one in particular you could call out, or they all sort of come into the mix to impact finance? Together?
Well, I think the three big technology changes that I think will have an impact on finance, and they will have an impact on finance on different levels, are on the one hand RPA, robotic process automation, where you really have sort of rule-based engines that do simple transactional rule-based activities in an automated way, 24/7. And so there's a good, I would call it, automation potential. So that's the first tier. Then I would go into the more intelligent, artificial intelligence solutions that would create, for instance, service chatbots or more intelligent ways of handling exception work, handling cash application. I was at an SAP conference this week, and SAP is now starting also to apply what they call machine learning, so artificial intelligence also, into, for instance, cash application processes. So when a customer receives a payment advice or a remittance advice from a customer, usually they just come as a PDF, and so they have made a mixture of technologies that has OCR and machine learning, artificial intelligence, to then intelligently identify the payment advice numbers and match them to the outstanding accounts receivable items, for instance. So for me, that would be the second step. And then you have this whole layer of working with big data, working with predictive analytics tools. That for me would be a third layer. So in a way, they all have a potential to change processes or change the setup of finance as they are. And it goes back to a lot of automation will basically free up human work, and that could be then skilled in a different way to provide more analysis and to provide more insights. So I think those are the three effects of technology that I see as a primary factor.
So there's some good options now for our listeners to put with their homework and see how they can sort of transform not only the business but finance as well. So Johannes, thanks for doing that.
One additional thought while I think about it, I mean, also using standard office technology like SharePoint or tools like Slack. At BearingPoint, we use a Microsoft tool called Teams that's like Slack. So having these social collaboration tools and ways to share data across an enterprise network, or also even across networks that include customers or external customers and vendors. I think that basic set of new collaborative and social technology will also make a month-end reporting and reporting on what happens in the different entities or countries much easier. Way back when I was doing variance analysis on month-end, I needed to make telephone calls, copy paste emails into a report. Because we didn't have things like SharePoint, but now this is all, you can have it all in one place. You can have a dashboard where you do your direct comments in there. And so I think the advance of Office technology in itself also creates new ways of working that can be also explored by the finance team.
I'm glad you've tagged that one on, because these things are right in front of us. They're fairly ubiquitous, but how many of us often overlook what's really in front of us sometimes to get the best out of it? So that's fantastic. You tagged that in there, Johannes. So, and also I know I touched on your article about how the CFOs can start to define a new finance strategy. So I'm going to put that link into the show notes as well. It was very well received. Had an awful lot of likes and shares on LinkedIn. So definitely worth including that as well. So Johannes, I want to change it up a couple of gears. I wonder if you cast your mind back throughout your career, maybe what was the best piece of advice you've ever received?
One of the best pieces of advice I received was from a colleague back actually at Thunderbird. This is my MBA program that I did in Glendale, Arizona. It is an international MBA program. And Thunderbird is very big on having a great alumni network, and so we're working very close. We're working very closely of bringing alumni back into job positions and sharing what is going on and what are opportunities. So the piece of advice I received there is really to maintain a good network of former colleagues, of alumni. To really keep in touch, and I'm still in touch with a lot of my friends from school back then, from work in the US, and we're sharing opportunities and we're bringing people back and forth. And so for me, having a good alumni network also now in consulting has resulted in some of the most interesting job opportunities or consulting opportunities for me. That were then in the end much easier to realize than having to go through an official tender process, etc. So keep up your network, maintaining your network, spend time, designate time to actively maintain your network. It also adds a human and nice personal touch to your work, and I really enjoy, calling back my old customers and say, how you doing, what things are going on, and it's always very interesting.
I like the way you mentioned the human element, because that's how we're going to differentiate ourselves when a lot more of what we do becomes digital, and it's a great way of standing out. And I just wish someone had said that to me when I was starting out as well. And I think of the many sort of colleagues and friendships I've sort of let pass by much better now, but there's been many years where it would have been a nice thing just to get on the phone or just catch up with an old colleague over a coffee and see how things are going in their world and switch off from what was going on in mine. So that would be a fantastic suggestion.
Definitely. And can I add one addition?
Oh yes, definitely. Please, Johannes.
Coming to think about it, I mean, one other piece of advice that I would also give to any colleague is, be generous with your time that you spend with other colleagues and with other people, in terms of talking to them about what are their concerns, what can I offer them, also and sharing your knowledge across a broader network. And now you mentioned the LinkedIn professional network that we have. We have so many different networks that we can use, and I think giving some of the knowledge also for free for me is a great way of receiving great feedback from a lot of different people, and you see that in the comments that are being received in the more active LinkedIn communities. Those are great discussions, and those will in some ways, I think, be an additional way to learn about new things, to get instant feedback, and to work together in the future. So I think sharing giving away some of your knowledge, not all, but giving away some of your knowledge is really also you will always get back more than you give.
That's so true. That's so true, Johannes. And I don't want to take away from our time together by relating my stories, because I think you've done enough there on that. It's I couldn't agree more with both of those items you recommended. So audience, pay attention. That's been some fantastic advice. Just one more sort of question in that area, Johannes. Like, if you sort of recommend books or resources to people, like what would be probably the best and most common resource you'd recommend to others to go take a look at?
A great resource that I really appreciated and I use quite a bit is called the FSN network, and I can share the links with you for your show notes. It's an organization that is also on LinkedIn, but they have their own website and they have tons of great thought leadership pieces on finance and finance technology, accounting technology. It's run by a guy named Gary Simon, and he's very active in that community, and he does a tremendous job in bringing together the best and the most current of thinking in the area of finance. So this is one resource I would highly recommend. A great book that it's quite old, it's from 2006, is by Jeremy Hope. It's called Reinventing the CFO. Jeremy Hope was a guy that was part of the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable organization. He passed away, unfortunately, a few years back, but this Reinventing the CFO is really a book that is still very readable today, and it has a lot of good thinking on getting the basics right, simplifying your processes, adopting lean principles in accounting and finance processes, the role of finance leadership in really pushing yourself to create value for the business, to be disciplined with your finance function, etc. It's a great read, and I recommend it highly.
Fantastic. So those links will all be going in the show notes. And in terms of yourself, Johannes, should our audience wish to connect with you or find out more information about you, where's the best place to find you at?
I think one of the best places to connect with me is through LinkedIn. You can find the work that we do at our company at BearingPoint at www.bearingpoint.com.
We really appreciate you giving up your time and donating your time to be a guest mentor for us today, and particularly the insights around the digital future, the digital finance we should be expecting to see, and also some of your lessons and great pieces of advice that I know will add a tremendous value to our audience, having sort of fun, rewarding and successful careers in terms of making an impact for themselves but also for their businesses. So Johannes, thank you very much for making time for us today and investing your time for us on the show.
Well, great. And thank you for doing the great work that you do on your podcast and on your website. I think it is really important. And I think the time is now to, like you said, to make finance also something that is exciting professionally. And I think it is something that will be even more exciting in the years to come with all the new technologies, because it will not just be crunching numbers or counting beans, but it will be making sense of things. So thank you for the work that you do, and keep up the very good work, Andrew.
So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to know more about our guests today, their bio, and follow up on the resources mentioned during the show, you can find all the relevant links and more at sitnshow.com. There you'll also be able to get access to earlier shows, read the latest blogs. There's also an opportunity to subscribe to our newsletter, which will give you heads up as to when the next show is coming out, latest events, news, and anything that's going to be relevant to help you have a fun, rewarding and successful career in finance and accounting. And just before you go, we really appreciate your feedback. If there's something we can do better on the show, something that's not working, or something you'd like to see, even a guest you'd like for us to invite onto the show, someone who you think might be able to benefit you more and also the rest of our community, please let me know. You can email me. I'm at andrew@sitnshow.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message so I know how you found me and we can connect. And really, it's our community that'll make the show. If we keep engaging and driving each other on, we'll keep on building our strength in the numbers. When all is said and done, if we can do the numbers better and finance better, we'll create more opportunities for ourselves, our friends, our families, our communities and our businesses. So until next time, have a good rest of the week, take care, and let's keep building our strength in the numbers.